Media. There's one really situation or one attribute about Palpatine that makes him an incredible manipulator, and why he was able to, and you know what, regardless of which way the war ended up, he would have been on top.
You're listening to Path of the Jedi with your host, Ronnie Cruz.
All right, welcome to Path of the Jedi, the podcast where Star Wars meets personal development. My name is Ronnie Cruz, your host for this affirming adventure. That's right, affirming. Okay, so I am the type of person who, I'm an observer, right? Like I like to really sit in awareness. I like to be mindful of myself. I'm really working to continue to be mindful of the world around me and my experiences that I'm having. And as a result of that, as a result of kind of this, very observant characteristic that I have, I notice patterns, right? I notice patterns, and you can call them signs, you can call them patterns, but I listen to these things and I interpret them for myself. Not just interpret them, but I create meaning for them, of them, for them. I create meaning for them for myself, if that makes sense. And I say affirming because there are times when, maybe completely opposite things, unrelated things in your life, just all of a sudden start aligning with each other. For me, when that happens, again, it's a sign or it's a pattern. It's a sign that is an indicator that I am exactly where I need to be. Right, so it's an affirmation that I'm headed in the right direction, and I say this is I choose the word affirming this week for that particular reason. Now, with the show Path of the Jedi, I very much realize that it's taken kind of a backseat right now for me. I have so many other things going on in the other aspects of my life, with all the projects, all my online marketing stuff, my new business that I'm launching. Of course, on top of my network marketing business, all the content that I'm creating and publishing. Pretty much everything. I'm in the what's what I'm looking for? I'm transitioning into a new phase in my career. And so given that, that's where all my energy and attention is going. And unfortunately, this podcast, this show, Path of the Jedi, has, as I said, it's taken kind of a back seat. I've to the point where I've seriously been considering the last couple of weeks of whether or not I should take a break. I don't want to, mind you. I absolutely love this, and this is a passion project for me. This is something that I really enjoy. But right now, it's very much hobby level. And this week, with the topic being manipulation, Palpatine, and how he is the master manipulator, I for some reason, everything aligned this week, because that topic, the subject matter of manipulation, is something that I've been discussing in all my other content this week, in the last couple of days. So it's like, okay, so everything is in alignment. That to me is an affirmation. It affirms that I'm on the right track. So this show, Path of the Jedi, I'm happy to say that it's not going anywhere. I will continue to bring you content, to bring you a show at least every week. Sorry, I was about to say every other week, but no, every week. Maybe more than that, and I hope, and I know I haven't done as great a job as I've done in the past on the content on the episodes these past couple of weeks, but I will continue to show up and to give you what I can give you, right? All right, so very, very affirming, and I'm really happy for that, because again, I love doing this. I love showing up for you, and I'm glad that the universe has told me that I am on the right track. And mind you, these signs, these patterns, I mean, it's all interpretive, right? You give it the meaning that you want to give it, and that's what I choose to do, right? When I see things align, again, my interpretation of that is, and the meaning that I want to give to it is that, okay, I am on the right track. As opposed to if everything in my life, if all the different things that I'm doing in my life are kind of, contradicting each other and are at odds with each other, and like there's all that friction created, then that's an indicator that you might be time to maybe at the very least, kind of course correct a little bit, right? Adjust your trajectory, if not change your direction entirely, right? So, that's how I like to approach things. Like, listen to your gut, and a lot of it is a gut play. If there's either friction or alignment, those things can be indicators of what to do moving forward. Anyways, excited, right? Like that's the main thing. Again, I'm elated that the universe has affirmed to me that I need to keep showing up for this show and this particular topic, which is super important: manipulation and Palpatine being the master manipulator. Now we all know he is the master manipulator. I mean, top to bottom, he manipulated an entire galaxy, pretty much, right? And of course, Anakin, among others, one of the ones that he directly manipulated. So it's like a direct manipulation and an indirect manipulation. And so that's really what I want to get into. What are the characteristics that make Palpatine a manipulator, a master manipulator, and really what manipulation boils down to, right? Like, well, how was he able to do it? And you might be surprised. The answer may not necessarily be what you think it is, right? So we're going to get into that. Now, let's start off with talking about manipulation itself. And I'm just going to throw out kind of my interpretation of what I believe manipulation is, what I feel manipulation is. It's creating outcomes, or the desire to create outcomes for yourself and get the results that you want at all cost. Regardless of how it affects the people. So let me backtrack. It's getting people to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do to get the result that you desire, and it's for nobody else's benefit but your own. And it can mean either it can be super innocuous, right? It's a spectrum. It's not like definitively manipulation is evil, but it's on a spectrum. There can be harmless manipulation, like kind of batting your eyes and sweet talking your significant other to go to the kitchen and get you a soda or whatever, and get you a drink, or the worst of the worst, right? The other end of the spectrum, where you have world leaders manipulating entire populations to commit atrocities on other people. That's kind of like the Palpatine side of the spectrum. I mean, of course, we have examples of that throughout human history. So manipulation, again, at its most basic, is getting people to do something that it wouldn't otherwise do for your own benefit and for nobody else's benefit. And it doesn't take into account, whether it's something that's going to harm them or is of benefit to the other person. So with that, manipulation, I mean, it's something that I think we all do, and it comes from the behavioral pattern of manipulation comes from a very young age. It's how we get what we need, right? It's a survival. It starts off as a survival thing. I mean, a child cries. It's a form of quote unquote manipulation, because that's the only way it can communicate and get the parent to feed it, right? And so that's, I think, the root of it, at least from my understanding. I mean, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a behavioral scientist. I'm not a psychologist. So for those of you who are listening to this that might have a deeper understanding of it, pardon my layman's understanding. So that's where it comes from. And when you have the extreme cases like Palpatine being master manipulators, well, we might think, okay, his pathological lying is why he's a good manipulator, and I'm not saying that it's not, right? Like his ability to just kind of lie and be okay with it and just not even think twice. I mean, he was running both sides of the war. I mean, like, there's a high level of just inauthenticity is really the wrong word. I was going to say dishonesty, but that's even not strong enough either, right? To be on that level of just lying and falsities, it's just bonkers, right? And of course, he's fictional. It's a fictional character, but again, it goes to show you that when you're a master manipulator, you can just do whatever you want. And the fact that he's absolutely psychotic, there's no effect on his conscience. Conscience is what I meant. It doesn't ruffle his conscience at all to do what he's doing, right? Because he's pathological. So yeah, his ability to just flat out lie and not even think twice about it, it's part of what makes him a good manipulator, but that's not the reason, right? Like that's not the cause. That's not the driving point. His ability to spin. right? Obviously, like, he's a politician. I mean, he comes up in the ranks as a senator. And I know it's funny that politics comes into the equation in the conversation of manipulation, but I mean, it's all we at this point in Star Wars for sure, but even on Earth, it's almost impossible to separate the two. If you really look at, from an outsider's perspective, a neutral perspective, you can see where manipulation is happening. Again, we've seen it time and time again in human history, in very recent human history. And I don't mean to get into like geopolitical discussions on here, but like the reason why we've gone through what we've gone through in the last handful of years here in the United States is because of politics and the manipulation that's happened, manipulation over the people. I mean, we've had very much a Palpatine type character in the Oval Office for 4 years, for crying out loud. Glad he's not there anymore, thankfully, but I'm not going to get into that. Spin, right? Spin. Very much a political thing, right? Like, I mean, even with news outlets, but it is, PR, part of politics is PR. And so when you have somebody like Palpatine, coming up the ranks as a politician, as a senator, and then eventually becoming the emperor, yeah, of course he's good at spin. I just watched a recent episode of The Bad Batch, and it was the episode, and I haven't watched the new stuff yet, but I got caught up to the first set of episodes that were released, and there was that episode where the Bad Batch, the crew had helped expose the reason why, well, the truth behind why, what happened on Camino, right? The destruction of the city on the planet, and the death of all those citizens. And in exposing the truth, you would think that, okay, now we're exposing the underlying mechanisms, and this will lead closer to toppling the empire, right? Let's one step closer, and we now have an advantage, right? We're making progress. However, the emperor just comes out and just so, like, without any hesitation, he doesn't even bat an eye. He doesn't, not a drop of sweat, zero effort. He spins the entire story and he says, well, now that we have exposed this level of corruption in the empire, it's more reason why we need an imperial army. And we want to fund the stormtrooper program, right? And so he actually ends up getting his way anyways, right? Because he's just his like really adept at spin. It's second nature to him. Again, the lying and the spin. It's just, he's just so good at it, right? And again, he doesn't think twice. It's part of his nature. It's part of his identity now, right? Like, it's just second nature to him. Now, as good as he is at those things, that's not what makes him necessarily a manipulator. It's part of his tactics, but it's not what makes him a good manipulator. Now, of course, we can talk about like him using the Force and maybe using mind tricks, etc., etc. But beyond like superpowers, there's one really situation or one attribute about Palpatine that makes him an incredible manipulator, and why he was able to, and you know what, regardless of which way the war ended up, he would have been on top because of this trait. It's because he knew how to prey on people's need for certainty, right? And it, like, he not only knew that, but he was responsible for creating a ton of uncertainty with the Clone Wars, right? With the war itself, right? The separatist war and the Republic retaliation, pretty crazy stuff. And I say certainty because this is how you're able to manipulate, not just individuals, but massive amounts of people, entire populations of people, right? What he did was with all the uncertainty that was going on because of the war, all the instability that created pretty much in the entire system, right, in the entire galaxy, but then on the individual planets that the war affected, it just all that upheaval, all of that conflict creates uncertainty for the citizens. And so, you know, with him working both sides, he was just stoking the flames and building it up and creating more and more uncertainty. And so, whether again, regardless of which side ended up winning the war, he would all he would have had to do then was just step in and say, okay, look, I am going to give you guys certainty. I'm going to create order and peace in the galaxy if you make sure you follow me and listen to what I say, right? Right? You see this happening all the time. Again, it's happened repeatedly in human history. You creating this picture, and you don't even have to create, you know, that level of uncertainty. You can just paint pictures in people's heads, right? You can just plant ideas in their minds that there is a bunch of uncertainty, even if there's not. And then you can present yourself as the person that's going to provide that security and that certainty for the citizens, right? Again, we've seen it happen. It's really, really tremendous, and you know, seeking certainty is a natural thing that we all want, right? It's a survival thing. Again, you know, we come into this world. Well, yeah, I mean, pretty much unprotected and unable to fend for ourselves, and so we evolve and grow, wanting to create more certainty, because it's a survival. It's a deeply rooted survival mechanism. Understand, however, that there is no such thing as external certainty, right? Like we've heard time and time again that the only thing that's constant is change. The universe is ever expanding. Everything is always changing. No matter what, you know, how certain or how stable something feels outside of you, understand that the reality is impermanence. And because things are impermanent, then nothing is ever certain. And so to think that you can create certainty externally is really, really dangerous, because when things become uncertain, then you rely on, again, somebody to come sweep in and provide that certainty for you. And that's what master manipulators do. I mean, think about it this way. The stormtrooper program in the Empire era stormtroopers, right? You have of course the clone troopers, and then you have the first order troopers, and smack in the middle of those is the stormtroopers. That was a completely volunteer army, right? That was a volunteer army. Now, why would you think, you know, all those, I mean, it must have been billions of citizens. Why would you think they would volunteer for somebody that's clearly, from our perspective as the viewer of this content, as the viewer of Star Wars, you would think that, okay, people should know better that the Empire is purely evil. But obviously, as a regular citizen that's caught up in a galaxy that's completely in turmoil, you're going to turn to the people that are presenting the most certainty, right? Right? You're gonna you might even enlist in helping create that certainty for the galaxy. It's not that the stormtroopers were necessarily brainwashed. Of course, that definitely can happen and probably did. Once you're in the system, I'm sure there's a high level of indoctrination happening. However, you had to volunteer for the thing in the first place. I mean, you had Han Solo, right? I know he was running away and he was kind of on the lam, but Han volunteered to join the Royal Navy, right? I think is what it was, as a pilot. Not the Royal Navy, but you know, the Imperial Navy, sorry, as a pilot. You have perfectly sane and good people, good citizens joining up, because there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. Even if it's something as simple as I need a paycheck, or we see things like, well, yeah, it'll put my family and my kids through education, right? Like we see that happening all the time, and not to say that system is bad here in the U.S. It's just it's seeking that certainty, right? It's all it is. It's all it is. Buying into doing something because of wanting to take care of, or wanting to create more certainty or stability in your life. Again, I don't necessarily think they were brainwashed coming in, and of course there are some stormtroopers that are just have the proclivity for violence and hatred. But I don't think that would be the case for those billions of stormtroopers that existed. I think most of them were probably regular citizens that were just trying to get by and were looking for a better option for themselves, and this was presented to them as as a good option to create more stability for themselves and their family, right? Right? How else would you get other people? How else would you get that number of people to commit atrocities, right? By telling them that this is how you're going to create stability and certainty, not only for yourself and your families, but for the galaxy around you. And everybody that opposes that, then that's are the ones that we have to wipe out or take care of. That's part of the indoctrination, of course. Then once they're in, then you start planting ideas in their minds. But it all stems from that manipulation. All stems from uncertainty and the basic human need and desire to create more certainty in their lives, external certainty. Again, I want to remind you that there's no such thing. There's no such thing. Like something can happen at the drop of a dime and your life can be completely changed. I mean, we experienced that in COVID. Like COVID radically changed everything and it created so much uncertainty in so many people's, and well, I think everybody's lives, right? Like there was like, and everybody was like, oh, I wish it would go back to normal. Understand there's no normal. There's no such thing as normal. There is change. That's the only thing that's constant. Sometimes change happens at a slower pace than other times, but it's always happening regardless. And so, again, the fact that the only thing real is impermanence tells me that there is no such thing as certainty. So where do we get our certainty from? If there is an innate need for certainty, where can we get that from? It's internal, right? We have to foster and develop internal certainty, and that's the certainty and confidence within yourself, your self-worth, your self-confidence, knowing that whatever happens externally, you'll be able to, number one, handle it, you'll be able to get through it, and you can face it head on, and it's not going to be the end of you, right? All right, you'll be able to figure it out. You'll be able to manage it, right? And one way I like to encourage people to really develop this internal certainty is just look back at all the difficulties and the challenges that you've had to face in your life, right? Just look back. You might be experiencing some right now, and that it might feel bad, and so you're going to be clinging to certainty. But look back in your life, right? All the things that you faced from however long you can remember that were very challenging for you, that were really like it was times of struggle. They're in the past, right? So that means, I think logically, that means you've gotten through them, right? So the fact that you've gotten through them tells me that you can get through them, right? And the fact that you could have gotten through them means that you can get through whatever it is that you're facing right now. If you're facing challenges, if you're struggling with any particular thing, you have to develop this, right? It's that resilience, it's that confidence, that knowing that, okay, yeah, life sucks right now, life is tough, but I know I can get through this. I know I can get through this. Because if you don't, then you're going to be very, very susceptible to other people's narratives. And sometimes those narratives aren't going to be very healthy. And sometimes those narratives and those stories that people are spinning are really not going to benefit you, but really are more for their benefit. And unfortunately, I see this happen. I see this happen all the time. Again, not often. Okay, so that contradicts myself. I've seen it happen repeatedly. It doesn't happen often necessarily, but I've seen it happen enough times to do a talk about it, so that you can raise your level of awareness of when it might be happening to you, right? Right. Most of the time, it's not purposeful. Most of the time, it's not meant to hurt you, and it's just somebody's unconscious pattern trying to fill a need that they need filled. Sometimes, however, in the very few instances, it can be very, very dangerous. And so that's why, we have to have this conversation, because whether it's meaningless or whether it's super, super risky, at least raising the level of awareness about manipulation and about how it can happen to us, hopefully equips us to being able to not fall into these traps. Right? Not fall into these traps. Because again, I mean, we're seeing it in the U.S. In the last, 5-6 years, we've seen people perpetrate just acts of atrocities on other human beings because of being led to believe certain things and being manipulated into acting in certain ways, right? Right? And so we can stop doing this. And if you're one of those people, it's okay, right? Right? Like I know there were a handful of people that were duped into thinking that storming the Capitol building a few years ago was a smart and right thing to do, and a lot of the people that did that realized that they were just duped into believing that. There's still some people that believe that that was the right thing, unfortunately, but we'll get to those people eventually. Hopefully, we'll get them to open up their minds. But if you have been manipulated, it's never too late to, number one, step away, and number two, just start atoning and making amends and behaving correctly, right? So and part of that is creating certainty internally as opposed to always seeking external certainty, right? Really, really important stuff, y'all. Really important stuff. And I hope I did it justice in explaining this because, Palpatine is a cautionary tale, right? Again, I've said this before about Star Wars. It's a reflection of the human experience. And George Lucas doesn't shy away from politics. I know that much. And a lot of what what he created, especially originally, was meant to reflect a lot of the the stuff that he believes and regarding the political climates of the time, and it holds the same. It still holds the same, right? There's definitely some universalities about the themes and especially the archetypes that he created in Star Wars, and that's one that's really important to pay attention to, because the last thing we want is another Palpatine calling the shots, right? Right? People down there in Florida. Yeah. Oh, not just Florida, but I know that one just pops in my head. I know, I apologize. I don't mean to get too political, because this can be, this conversation of manipulation can also apply to, personal relationships. I've seen individuals be manipulated into staying in relationships that are very, very dangerous and very toxic, and so again, if that's you, raise your level of awareness and really seek that certainty somewhere else. You have it within you to create certainty for yourself. You do not need somebody to give you certainty, right? Don't let someone else tell you that you need them in your life, right? Right, that's foolhardy. It has to be a choice, and I guess that's the thing. I don't know if I said this earlier, but manipulation is removing people's choice, right? And that's why I really have to adamantly speak out about it, because I never want you to be in a situation where you have no choice, right? Right? Okay, so that's the topic for today. I know it's pretty serious and kind of heavy. But that's just kind of where my head's at, and it very much is right in alignment with Star Wars and with Palpatine. So yeah. If you know anybody that's in that situation, or if you're in that situation yourself, please either seek help or give help. Right? Give help or seek help. We want to protect each other. We want to take care of each other. And yeah. So yeah, that's a talk for today. Hopefully that makes sense. And of course, if you have any questions, if you want to have further discussions about it, hit me up on the socials. Of course, it's POTJ Podcast on Twitter, or you can hit me up on Instagram, my personal Instagram. It's the Ronnie Cruz. Excuse me, one word. I'm not really active on Twitter much. I've just kind of lost. I've lost a desire for it, really. When honestly, I hate saying this, but when Elon took over, it just kind of, the ugliness came. There was so much ugliness. There's generally not a lot of ugliness on my timeline, but it just kept showing up, right? Both for and against Elon Musk taking over Twitter, and it's like I don't like to expose myself to that, right? So But you can reach out to me. I will do my best to continue to get tied in, and check Twitter when I can, or like I said, reach out to me on Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram. It's the Ronnie Cruz, at the Ronnie Cruz. And yeah, let's have further discussions about this particular topic. It's an important one. Across the board. So that's that. I appreciate each and every one of you. All right, so now it's time for the shout out. All right, so as I told you last week and the week before, I was trying to start a new thing called the Shout Out Network, where I shout out other podcasts that I love, and hopefully creating a network of podcasters that give shout outs to each other and other podcasts that they love as well. Just to grow, help grow each other's audiences, but also to expose each other to potentially new podcasts that you might love and enjoy as well. I haven't really followed through very well with that idea. It's kind of like, in my mind, the last thing I need is to take on another initiative. So it's kind of lagging. It's kind of lagging in that regard. So if you have anybody, or if you have a show that you believe that deserves a shout out, please send it to me. And I would love to give it a review and check it out, and maybe if it meets my own criteria personally, I will definitely check it out and give a shout out on the show. Of course, if you have just individuals that you want to give a shout out to, if it's somebody you love, somebody special in your life, somebody that's made an impact for you, share that as well, right? Send that to me as well. I would love to give people shout outs. You guys know how much I love giving shout outs. And so you can send any of that to info@pathofthejedi.com with shout out in the subject heading. This week, I do want to give a shout out to a new podcast that I just recently started listening to that I absolutely love. Again, it's one of those situations where it's just kind of everything is in alignment now. I heard of this podcast through another podcast that I listened to, and I started listening. I started picking up on the recent episodes, and really everything that this individual talks about, her message, her story, really is in alignment with my own sensibilities. And so it's one of those things that's very, very affirming that I'm on the right track. So I want to shine some light on Jessica Zweig. Let's see, her name is Zweig. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Jessica Zweig and her podcast, the Simply Be Podcast. I'll leave a link in the show notes of today's episode. But yeah, check it out. I mean, she does talk a little bit about marketing. Well, not a little bit, but she is an entrepreneur. She's a business person. So she talks about business, but it's in the she does it in a way and in a style where it's very, I don't know, there's something kind of very intuitive. She talks about, universal energy. In the most recent episode that I listened to, she was talking about the multiverse and different timelines. And I'm all about like the quantum realm, right? Like that's all stuff that I really love and again, aligns with my sensibilities. So she was definitely speaking my language, and I immediately really fell in love with her show and her content. And so I encourage you, if that's stuff that you're into, I think that Jessica can really open you up to a whole new world of thinking outside of Star Wars and personal development that we bring here at Path of the Jedi. And it also might expose you to other ideas when it comes to entrepreneurism and business, right? In case you happen to be on that track. But again, for me, it's just like, man, I was just talking about the quantum realm like 2 days ago on my Facebook Lives that I'm doing every day right now. And here she is talking about the multiverse and the quantum realm, right? So it's really fun. It's really fun when things kind of align in your life that were seemingly unrelated, but now you see the signs, right? You see the signs, right? You see the patterns, and so I'm giving it that meaning that it's meant to be and that I'm on the right track. And so that's why I wanted to give Jessica Zweig a shout out on this week's episode. I'm really looking forward to following her journey more, discovering more about her and her message and her story. But in the meantime, if you want to check her out, it's a great show. Again, it's Jessica Zweig at the Simply Be Podcast. So Jessica, this week's shout out goes to you. All right, well, that's going to do it for this week's episode. For those of you who happen to be interested in online marketing, or if you're interested in becoming a content creator, I know I have a lot of podcasters that listen to this show. If you're interested in learning more about what it means to be an influencer and how to kind of create a business with your content creation, please come join me at my Influencer Masterclass. That's next week, February 27th through March 1st. It's a 3-day masterclass, absolutely free, 1 hour a day, give or take, at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And like I said, I'm going to talk about what it looks like, what it means to be an influencer, right? And what content creation looks like, and how you can potentially leverage all of that to creating a new business, or even maybe just a side income for yourself. Now, if you can't make those times and those dates, that's fine. Go ahead and register, because anybody that registers will get access to the replays, right? I'll be making the replays available for a limited time, so you'll be able to watch them on your own time, just as long as you register. So again, if that's something you're interested in, or if you know somebody that's interested in that kind of stuff, send them to ronniecruz.com/masterclass. I'll leave a link in the show notes of this episode. But just register. Again, it's free. You got absolutely nothing to lose, and you might learn a thing or two that can help you kind of expand your options. So that's what's happening. That's really the bulk of what's happening with my world right now. But I appreciate you tuning in to this show. I absolutely love this show. I absolutely had a great time talking about this week's topic. Again, super, super important. And if you want to talk about it more, again, you can either reach me on the socials, or you can send me an email at info@pathofthejedi.com with this week's the title of this week's episode in the subject heading, and we can discuss it more. Okay. All right. So that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you for tuning in. I love each and every one of you. We will definitely see you next week with a fresh new episode. So until then, be well, be safe, and may the Force be with you.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company nor Lucasfilm Limited, and is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names and sounds and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is intellectual property of Path of the Jedi unless otherwise indicated.